stung by that, but the Leafs are going to force Game 7 in Boston Saturday night.
This can't be happening again, can it? The beautiful thing about that statement is that it applies to both these franchises. For the Leafs, they are a team tormented by Game 7s, specifically against the Boston Bruins. They've come back from this exact 3-1 deficit in the past, only to lose in the most heartbreaking fashion. For Boston, they held a 3-1 series lead last year and were on the wrong side of one of, if not the biggest upsets in NHL history. Now, history is repeating itself once again, and there's no doubt that both fan bases and franchises have a massive psychological boogeyman to kill heading into Game 7. Early in this series, it was pretty much all Boston. Aside from a solid Game 2 performance from Toronto, Boston was the better team in the first 4 games. Tactically, Toronto is a team far more committed to dumping in the puck these playoffs than in years prior. According to Mike Kelly, the Leafs have dumped the puck in on over 60% of their entries at 5-on-5. Only the Panthers have a higher dump-in rate, and the Leafs have never been over 60% in recent playoff years in this category. They want to create offense by initiating their forecheck, but the key for Toronto is balancing that so that their best players can still get controlled zone entries. Early in the series, Boston's 1-2-2 in the neutral zone was incredibly effective at forcing Toronto to do this way more than they would prefer. Game 4 was a clinic from Boston as their structure, or F3 in the middle of the ice, forced Toronto's best players to dump the puck in. Again, this is a philosophy that Toronto wanted to embrace, but not every single time they had the puck. The dump and chase game isn't an issue if you can effectively set up your forecheck, but in the games that Boston had success, Boston was able to get quick exits with help from their goalie on the breakout. However, as the momentum in this series has started to shift, Toronto's forecheck has really started to pay off. Just off of the Leafs' forecheck, they've generated 21 scoring chances at 5-on-5. That is 9 more than any other playoff team. Running a 1-2-2 in these situations, the F1 will take the body while guiding the puck carrier into the direction of the F2. Despite past stereotypes about both of these teams, Toronto has been the more physical presence in this series, and with them establishing their forecheck game, it has opened up space for them to have the looks that they really want on controlled zone entries. It's similar in football. When the run game starts going, the passing game starts to open up. In Game 5, the Leafs dumped the puck in and effectively used their forecheck to pressure Boston into mistakes. It didn't lead directly to a goal, but it created the basis for the Leafs' OT winner. In a position where Leaf players have dumped this puck in all game long, this looks like another routine dump-in based on Tavares' limited help in the neutral zone. But this is where Tavares throws a curveball. He decides to make a move at the line and drive wide. The slight hesitation of whether or not he chips in this puck or makes a move freezes Grzelcyk just enough for Tavares to get a step. That controlled zone entry by Tavares leads directly to a goal, and it likely doesn't happen if Boston isn't expecting a dump-in. Game 6 was more of the same for the Leafs as they established their forecheck early on and hemmed the Bruins in their end. Shots were 12-1 at the end of the first, and the Leafs' pressure was a big reason why. Now, early in the series, Boston was also doing an incredible job at keeping the Leafs on the perimeter. The Bruins' goaltending was first in the NHL at stopping shots outside the slot, and Boston was doing just that when they took a commanding 3-1 series lead. Boston plays a hybrid structure which collapses and plays zone coverage when the puck is down low and in their end. It then switches to a man-on-man when the puck is high and teams try to create offense. The Leafs frequently have their most talented players as the F3 to use their skill and find space up high. Boston has seen this plenty from Toronto both in the regular season and in the playoffs, and they've exposed it with good pressure when man-on-man. But hockey is a game of inches, and when you get a favorable matchup, it can change everything. In Game 6, Toronto kicks into this formation off the faceoff. With Boston icing the puck prior to this, Toronto is out against Boston's fourth line. Nylander goes high to the blue line, and Maroon even gestures to his teammate to take Nylander so that Boston has their assignments. Now, it simply turns into beating your man 1v1. Nylander leverages his skill and skating to get a little bit of space, and he throws one on net, and it ends up in a goal. If Boston has one of their better lines out there, Nylander probably doesn't have that extra second to make a play. The Bruins' fourth line didn't play that terribly either. They still forced a shot from the perimeter, but when the difference in the playoffs are literally milliseconds, it can change the result. Now, where the Bruins have done most of their damage is on special teams. Toronto's power play has completely fallen off a cliff, going 1 for 20 in this series. That's because the Leafs can barely get set up because of the Bruins' pressure on the zone entry. The Leafs want to make a quick pass at the blue line, fight the pressure along the wall, and then send it to the point to set up. But Boston is extremely effective at knowing when and how to pressure in these situations. Playing a 1-3 on zone entries, Boston has 2 players pressure Tavares right away. He can't make a pass here because of this player, and the layers of the Bruins take away any viable option with space shrinking. To add on to the frustration for the Leafs, Boston has been extremely effective at swarming pucks along the wall. Penalty killers wait for things like bobbled pucks or players facing the wall to attack and be aggressive. Here, Marner takes a broken play and tries to pivot away from this attack. Now his back is turned to the play. Boston has 2 killers swarm him to force a turnover and clear the zone. The Leafs absolutely stink on the power play in this series, and that's because they can't even get set up. On the contrast is the Bruins power play. Where Boston thrives on the kill, Toronto has struggled. Early in the series, Boston was getting easy entries, and the aggressiveness that limits the time and space was just a step behind for Toronto. Once Boston sets up, it's been pretty automatic, clicking at 40% in this series. Boston has typically run a 1-3-1 on their power play, but with the Leafs sticking to their diamond formation, Boston has moved that bumper player down low to isolate the last Leaf D-man and create mini 2v1s down low. So the solution for Toronto has been to stay the hell out of the damn penalty box and smother Boston before they can get set up. In games 5 and 6, Boston has only had 2 power plays. You could definitely argue that they should have had a lot more, but in those 2 kills, the Leafs have done a good job at swarming awkward pucks and pressuring with numbers to ensure Boston doesn't get set up. The lack of power play chances in general has seemingly limited Boston's offense. Then of course, the big game changer in this entire series has been Joseph Woll. Stopping 49 of his last 51 shots, his calmness and confidence has seemingly leaked into the Leafs' defensive game. Toronto's blocking more shots, they're making far more better defensive plays under pressure, and the result has been less offensive zone time for Boston in general. The Bruins have had success in this series by also using their forecheck to create mistakes for Toronto. Early in the series, these mistakes were ending up in the back of the net. Now, Toronto's getting those extra saves, despite Boston having very similar looks off of Leaf turnovers. Both teams know what they need to do tactically, but the mentality of either team will be just as important as executing their strategy. But the team that will succeed is going to be the one that doesn't let their past failures impact the present. Game 7 is one game where one mistake can determine the outcome. Nerves create these mistakes, and we've seen it from both teams in either this series or in past series. The Leafs and the Bruins have demons in these exact moments. The winner of Game 7 will feel a massive amount of alleviation from pressure of their past failures. But the loser will simply be asking themselves, how the hell did this happen again?